Hello, I'm Jennifer from Me Time. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to assemble and bind your tree skirt from the Collectible Christmas subscription. If you're new to Me Time, we offer complete machine embroidery experiences delivered right to your door. Find out more at metimedelivered.com. I'm so excited that we're in the final months of the Sing Noel collection, and it's almost time to sew your wedges together and bind your project. In your October kit, you will receive enough binding strips for the entire tree skirt. Instructions are also provided for this. In this video, I'm going to walk through the instructions and show you how to bind your tree skirt. To prepare to bind your tree skirt, we're going to sew all the binding strips together. You will receive 4 pieces of binding already cut on the bias. I already sewed 3 of them together, but I'm going to show you how to do that as I sew this last strip to the rest. First, place 2 binding strips right sides together, forming a right angle with the diagonal ends aligned and the little triangles overhanging about 1/4 of an inch, like this. Now take these to your machine and sew the strips together on the diagonal with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Trim off the little triangles. I guess some people call them dog ears. Open the binding strips into a straight line and press the seams open. You'll repeat these steps for each of the binding strips until you have one long piece of fabric. Since I've already did the other strips, I'm going to move on to the last step, which is folding the binding strip in half, wrong sides together and lining the raw sides together. After the binding is folded, you'll press well along the whole strip. Okay, we're ready to sew our wedges together now. You can arrange them however you want. We followed the diagram from the directions. In the instructions, it recommends you sew them in groups of 2 and those 2 together for 4, and then combine them all together like that. But for this tutorial, I already sewed all of them together but the last 2. Place 2 wedges on top of each other, right sides together, and align the edges. Pin or clip in place. Use a matching thread color, sew the wedges together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Now we'll add both of these to the rest of the tree skirt. Since this is the last wedge, we aren't going to sew wedges A and L together because we want to leave a gap to easily slide this under the tree. When you're all done sewing your wedges together, flip it over to the back and then press the seams as desired, either to the side or open. I like to press them open. If you want to sew the fabric to the back, there are directions on how to do that. In this video, however, I'm not going to add the fabric to this tree skirt because the back won't be seen. But if you want to add fabric to your tree skirt, the written instructions will walk you through how to do that. Now we're ready to sew the binding on. If you don't use the binding provided, make sure that your binding fabric is cut on the bias because it's going to allow you to sew the binding on the curve really nicely. We're going to start by binding the side of wedge A, go all the way around the circle, and back up the side of wedge L. The instructions call this binding section A. Then we'll do section B, which is the center circle. Personally, I prefer to finish my binding with hand sewing, so I'm going to show you how to do that method. But there are other methods in the instructions as well. First, lay the tree skirt right side up. Then align the raw edge of the binding along the open inner corner on wedge A or L. Make sure the folded side is facing toward the tree skirt like this. With your sewing machine, use a 1/4 inch seam allowance to sew the edge of the binding to the edge of the tree skirt. Start out slow and make sure to keep the binding loose. You don't want to pull or stretch the binding fabric. When you get to a corner, create a hidden fold by sewing straight off the edge. Then fold the binding from the corner at a 45-degree angle, aligning the fabric with the next edge of the tree skirt. You will go all the way around the tree skirt, binding the outer part of the tree skirt. Cut off the excess binding strip, which will be used to bind the inner circle of the tree skirt. Fold the binding that you just sewed on over the edge of the tree skirt and pin or clip it in place. When you're done with this, begin to hand sew the binding to the back of the tree skirt. Use a hidden stitch to travel through the fold of the binding and tack it in place. Be sure to tack the inside corner of each mitered corner of the project also. After you finish hand binding the outer part of the tree skirt, it's time to bind the inner circle. Take the remaining binding and fold it in half. Clip or pin it to the halfway point of the inner circle of your tree skirt. Then lay the raw edge of the binding along the edge of the tree skirt and bind the center circle, just like you did the outer circle of the tree skirt. Leave this extra binding to use as your ties. Fold the binding to the back of the tree skirt and hand bind just like you did on the outer tree skirt. To finish the ends of the ties, fold the end under about 1/4 of an inch and then fold it over another 1/4 of an inch. Press it and sew the ends. Be sure to back stitch at the beginning and the end of the stitching. If you don't want the stitching to show on the edge of the tie, you can hand sew like I did here. Well, that's it. Our tree skirt is all assembled. I want to personally thank you for your patience with this project. It turned out beautifully in the end. Binding is one of my favorite things to do while sitting with my husband and enjoying a good show. Please tell us what your favorite part of this project is and show your completed tree skirts on the Me Time Facebook community. Thank you for joining today. Now go enjoy some well-deserved me time.